There are obviously a lot of concerns with late planted crops, particularly soybeans up in this area. Y'all have pretty good insect pressure up here, and planting late like we are brings a lot of concerns to insect management and the things that you need to think about. Jeremy touched on the seed treatment. You know, that's what our data shows. The extremes are where we get the most value out of these seed treatments. So realizing that a bag of beans is $60, $65, I know it's not cheap, and it's certainly something that you got to consider. But I think those seed treatments help you get off to an early start. And with late planted, there's a lot of pests out there that can pop up that can be a problem for you early season, like three-cornered alfalfa hoppers and bean leaf beetles and that kind of stuff, that these seed treatments will provide you that control that you need to get over the hump and get a good start. Obviously, your yield potential's already been impacted. You heard that from Jeremy. So you're working on a short leash here, and everything that you can do to get off to a good start to maintain what yield potential you have is very, very important. He talked a little bit about getting that canopy closed, and I can't stress the importance of that, particularly on bowworms in particular. That's the most serious pest that we have to deal with. And if you got open canopy, and I can see the ground at bloom time when those beans start blooming, those are the fields that are really going to get tagged with bowworm populations. We've been monitoring bowworm populations since April, and I can tell you right now, the numbers are a little higher than average. So we're dealing with pretty good worm population out there right now. So the potential for us to get in an issue with corn earworm or cotton bowworm, whatever you want to call it, is pretty high right now. So getting that canopy closure can make a whole lot of difference on the pressure that you get with these worms. And so whatever it takes. The other part of it that we see this time of year, late planted, is fall armyworm populations. And the biggest problem we got there is letting grass grow in the field and you taking time and letting it develop before you spray it. I can tell you right now, if you let that grass grow and get started in that soybean crop, it's going to be an issue for us with fall armyworm, so we need to watch out for that. Don't let grass get started in your field. Get it under control early so the worms can't come in there and lay their eggs on that grass. That's where we have the problem with fall armyworm, is with broadleaf signal grass and crabgrass and that kind of stuff, providing a host for the worm to get started, and then you spray your Roundup and they move right over onto the crop. That's one of the biggest issues that y'all got up in this river valley. So it's one that you got to pay particular attention to, particularly planted this late in the season. The other part obviously is all the late season pests that we get to. You know, the reason all the insects get worse is because they have time to build up into big numbers by the end of the year, and your beans are still going to be green at that time. So bowworms and stink bugs and all those major pests that we deal with, the potential there is great to have a problem. With that being said, it's going to be very important for you to make applications when you need to make applications and not make unnecessary applications. There's a tendency for us a lot of times to, when we're going across the field, to throw something in the tank for some potential problem that you may or may not have. We don't want to do that. This is not the situation where we want to throw a pyrethroid, particularly a pyrethroid, out just because you're going across the field. You got to scout those beans. You got to scout them weekly. You got a lot of good county agents up here in this river valley that can help y'all do that. If you get into issues or problems, or you think you got an issue with an insect, call somebody and let us come look at it. If you don't have somebody checking your crop on a regular basis, this might be the year that you need to take the time to do that if we're going to maintain some yield potential on this crop. We can't let the insects take it away. If we're going to spend the money, you need to maintain your yield potential and not let insects become a problem. And on late planted beans, the potential is extremely high for that. There's still some talk about maybe some people planting grain sorghum and that kind of stuff. That aphid has not showed up. The sugarcane aphid has not showed up at this point in Arkansas. But with late planted grain sorghum, the issue with sugarcane aphid is there. The potential for a problem. And if I have to spray twice for aphid, once for midge and once for headworm, where's the money in that? So you better think real hard and long about planting sugarcane or grain sorghum this late with that potential issue. It can be managed, but it's going to be expensive, and I don't know where the profit is on that. The bottom line is making money. That's why you grow crops, and watching and monitoring insects and treating as needed is going to be extremely important to you this year. So I would tell you, if you're not in the habit of checking your beans on a regular basis, these late planted beans, you better get in that habit this year. It's going to be very, very important to you. Okay? And let's watch for the stink bugs. We got a lot of stink bugs moving through the landscape right now. They're out looking. We're seeing a lot of stink bug activity, more than normal for this time of year. They're already moving into the early planted beans. If you happen to have any early planted beans, you had best be checking them because the stink bug pressure is extremely high this year right now. Not a lot of good news, I'm sorry. I don't have a lot of good news for you.
What do they do to early beans?
Okay, so the question is, what kind of damage can they cause to early beans? If you're vegetative, what do stink bugs feed on? They're seed feeders. And so what we got right now is a bunch of stink bugs moving through the landscape looking for seed. So they're going to come into soybeans, they're going to look. If there's not any seed, any pod formation there, they're going to move on. And I wouldn't spray that situation. They're going to move on. But we do have some beans in the state that are beginning to pod, believe it or not. And those are the fields that we're watching. And they provide a nursery for your later planted beans. So they build up in numbers on these early planted fields, and then they move into the crops as they develop later in the season. And it just magnifies those numbers into those late planted beans, and that's why we get these tremendous insect populations that we get. And that's pretty much it. You just need to watch your crops really closely this year, monitor very closely. Get out there at least once a week and do some sweeping and walking and looking for developing problems and catch them on the front end and maintain that yield potential that you need to bottom line and be profitable.